Welcome to Ancient Wisdom. Today we're diving into a fascinating yet challenging topic: is pleasure a trap? This question has likely crossed your mind at least once in life. In a world filled with endless temptations from social media and material possessions to fleeting relationships, are we truly finding happiness? Or are we just chasing illusions? Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "Life is a series of endless desires, and satisfaction is only temporary." So are we like Dorian Gray, a symbol of beauty and youth, but also a victim of his own desires? Imagine if Leonardo da Vinci lived in today's world. How would he paint the Mona Lisa if she were obsessed with likes on social media? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt lost amidst fleeting pleasures? We're about to embark on a journey to uncover the shocking truth behind our desires, and this will surely leave you pondering deeply. Introduction to Dorian Gray and the main theme. The character Dorian Gray appears in the classic novel The Picture of Dorian Gray by Irish writer Oscar Wilde, first published in 1890. The work revolves around a handsome young man who becomes a symbol of beauty and eternal youth. But is this gift a blessing or merely a curse? When standing before a portrait that reflects his flawless appearance, Dorian makes a tempting trade-off to forever maintain perfect beauty while all traces of time, sin, and lust are imprinted on the painting instead of his physical self. Every time he indulged in the pleasure of the senses, the decay in his soul deepened. Yet, he couldn't stop himself. Why? Because pleasure is like an endless thirst. The more you chase it, the emptier and more lost you feel. Modern society mirrors Dorian Gray's plight. We find ourselves trapped in a relentless race for fame, material possessions, and social recognition. We often believe that the more we own and experience, the happier our lives will become. But is this belief truly valid? Or are we simply trading our authenticity to chase illusions, only to end up with a hollow void inside? In this video, Ancient Wisdom invites you to explore profound insights from philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience to uncover the true essence of pleasure. Is pleasure the gateway to happiness, or is it the invisible chain that binds the human soul? Consider this: if Leonardo da Vinci were alive today, would he still find joy in painting the Mona Lisa, or would he be distracted by the endless pursuit of likes and validation on social media? What about you? Are you chasing fleeting pleasures or seeking deeper fulfillment? As Victor Hugo once said, the supreme happiness of life is the conviction that we are loved for ourselves, or rather, loved in spite of ourselves. This raises an important question: can external pleasures ever truly satisfy us, or do they merely mask our inner longing for something more meaningful? Join us as we delve into these timeless questions and uncover the lessons hidden within Dorian Gray's tragic journey. Your thoughts matter. Share your perspective in the comments below. Analysis from a philosophical perspective. Dorian Gray entered life as a symbol of youth and perfect beauty, embodying the ideal that many strive for but few achieve. Yet behind that radiant appearance lay an invisible fear, a fear not just of aging, but of irrelevance. From the moment the artist Basil Hallward immortalized him on canvas, Dorian realized something profound: youth is fleeting, beauty temporary, and from that epiphany, an insidious fear began to creep into his psyche. He wished for the impossible, that his portrait would age, while he remained untouched by time, bearing all the scars of sin, lust, and moral decay. But what happens when we make such bargains with fate? As Oscar Wilde once said, the only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. And so Dorian did. At first, Dorian's life was a whirlwind of indulgence. He basked in admiration, reveling in lavish parties, passionate affairs, and the intoxicating feeling of conquest. With every compliment and longing glance, Dorian became more convinced that he had conquered the game of beauty and pleasure. Yet he failed to see that pleasure is a double-edged sword. It arrives swiftly but vanishes just as fast, leaving behind a void that demands to be filled. His initial satisfaction gradually morphed into dissatisfaction, a gnawing hunger for more. Why do we chase after pleasures that never truly satisfy? Perhaps because, as Socrates noted, the unexamined life is not worth living. Yet how often do we examine the pleasures we pursue, no longer content with ordinary experiences, Dorian craved novelty, even if it meant venturing into darker territories. He abandoned his pure love for Sybil Vane, a fragile actress whose innocence once captivated him, simply because the thrill of conquest had faded. He plunged headfirst into frivolous relationships driven by power and ambition. But no matter how much he sought, the satisfaction was always fleeting, replaced by an emptiness that nothing could fill. It's reminiscent of Leo Tolstoy's observation: boredom, the desire for desires. The traces of his debauchery were nowhere to be seen on Dorian's face, but the portrait told a different story. Each glance at the painting filled him with horror, not because of wrinkles or gray hair, but because it revealed the corruption of his soul. Instead of halting his descent, Dorian delved deeper into temptation, hoping that pleasure would shield him from the encroaching reality. The portrait became a mirror reflecting not his outward appearance, but his inner turmoil. Isn't it ironic how we often run toward things that destroy us? Dorian Gray's tale serves as a perfect metaphor for modern society. We are like Dorian, obsessed with appearances, validation from others, and instant gratification. Social media has become our modern-day portrait, where we craft flawless images and conceal our imperfections. But the more we chase this perfection, the more disconnected we feel from our true selves. Are we living authentic lives, or merely curating illusions? Dorian didn't realize that pleasure was another form of pain, one that could never be quenched. The more he searched, the more he became enslaved to the very things he once controlled. So is pleasure really the key to happiness, or is it a trap that keeps us stuck in an endless cycle? Through the lenses of philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience, we can explore the nature of pleasure and how to break free from its grip. Pleasure and happiness have been debated for millennia. Three philosophers, Epicurus, Schopenhauer, and Nietzsche, offer contrasting perspectives that illuminate this complex relationship. Epicurus believed that pleasure leads to happiness, but not through hedonistic excess. He distinguished between necessary pleasures, simple joys like food, affection, and peace, and frivolous ones like fame or power. True happiness, according to Epicurus, comes from controlling desires, savoring simplicity, and avoiding over-indulgence. Had Dorian embraced Epicurus' philosophy, he might have found contentment in small pleasures rather than drowning in extravagance. In contrast, Arthur Schopenhauer viewed pleasure with skepticism. He argued that life is a series of endless desires. Achieving one goal brings only fleeting satisfaction before we crave something else. This relentless cycle of dissatisfaction mirrors Dorian's experience. Every time he reached the peak of ecstasy, from admiration to romance, he quickly felt inadequate and rushed into new pursuits. Yet instead of finding fulfillment, Dorian grew increasingly hollow, much like those today who chase material wealth and success without ever feeling truly satisfied. Schopenhauer warned that the only escape is reducing desires and accepting life as it is. But how many of us are willing to take that step? Nietzsche, however, offers a different perspective. He doesn't dismiss pleasure but sees it as a tool for self-development. High-level pleasures stem from creativity, willpower, and the drive to transcend limits. For Nietzsche, true satisfaction arises from growth, not indulgence. If Dorian had followed Nietzsche's philosophy, he wouldn't have fixated on external validation but sought value within himself. Instead, he let pleasure control him, becoming addicted to lust and adoration. Nietzsche reminds us that success and happiness aren't about enjoyment, but about becoming the best version of ourselves. From these three perspectives, it's clear that unchecked pleasure can trap us in cycles of dissatisfaction and meaninglessness. Epicurus teaches us to find joy in simplicity. Schopenhauer warns against the endless pursuit of desire. Nietzsche encourages us to transform pleasure into a catalyst for progress. Dorian Gray stands as a cautionary tale of failing to master pleasure, allowing it to dictate his life, until he realized too late that no amount of pleasure could fill the void inside. Like Dorian, we may unknowingly bind ourselves to the endless pursuit of pleasure. Through his story and classical philosophy, we can glean valuable lessons for modern life. First, enjoy pleasures mindfully, cherishing small moments and finding joy in simplicity. Second, reduce desires, practice gratitude, and embrace the present rather than chasing distant goals. Finally, aim for long-term value. Pleasure is a means, not an end. Seek growth, purpose, and meaning in life. Psychological insights into pleasure. From philosophical perspectives, we've seen that pleasure can be a subtle yet powerful trap. But what makes people unable to resist its pull? To better understand this, let's delve into the psychological mechanisms behind pleasure, blending ancient wisdom with modern science. Pleasure is not merely a fleeting emotion. It is an integral part of the human psychological framework. Since primitive times, the brain has been wired to seek and respond to pleasure as a survival mechanism. In those early days, pleasure was tied to essential activities like eating, mating, and forming social bonds, actions crucial for survival and reproduction. However, in today's world, where pleasure can be accessed effortlessly through technology, entertainment, and instant gratification, humans often spiral into cycles of endless desire, never feeling truly satisfied. This shift raises an important question: why do we keep chasing more when we already have so much? Dorian Gray serves as a quintessential example of losing control over pleasure. At first, admiration and love sufficed to fulfill him. Over time, however, these pleasures lost their luster. Dorian craved deeper connections, stronger experiences, and ceaseless praise. His dissatisfaction grew despite his outward success. Why does this happen? The answer lies in the brain's reward system, particularly the role of dopamine, a neurotransmitter central to motivation and pleasure. When we achieve something, even something small, the brain releases dopamine, creating a sense of euphoria and encouraging us to pursue similar actions in the future. While this mechanism is vital for progress, it becomes problematic when we grow dependent on it. Like Dorian Gray, once accustomed to certain levels of achievement or stimulation, we no longer feel satisfied with the same level of pleasure. This phenomenon is known as hedonic adaptation, where what once brought joy gradually becomes mundane, pushing us to seek ever greater highs. In today's hyper-connected world, hedonic adaptation is more evident than ever. Social media platforms are prime examples. Each like, comment, or compliment triggers a dopamine rush, offering a brief moment of validation. Yet soon after, the excitement fades, leaving us craving more. We become trapped in a dopamine loop, perpetually unsatisfied. Consider the countless stories of wealthy individuals who, despite their riches, remain ensnared in the vanity trap of endless consumption and comparison. As Seneca wisely noted, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Psychologist Leon Festinger's social comparison theory sheds further light on this issue. According to Festinger, people evaluate their self-worth by comparing themselves to others. In Dorian's case, his obsession with pleasure stemmed not only from internal desires but also from societal pressures. A society, with its emphasis on perfection, wealth, and status, fueled his relentless pursuit of external validation. Dorian didn't just want to preserve his beauty, he wanted to experience every conceivable pleasure that others envied. Similarly, in our lives, scrolling through curated images of perfect vacations, dreamy relationships, and professional triumphs creates invisible pressure. We begin to wonder if we're falling short, prompting us to chase new pleasures to prove our worth. One of Dorian Gray's greatest tragedies is his inability to sustain genuine love. Initially, he loved Sybil Vane with pure passion. Yet as the novelty wore off, he abandoned her, seeking newer, more intense experiences to replace the fading thrill of romance. This reflects a common psychological truth. When people grow dissatisfied in long-term relationships, they often turn to novelty elsewhere, perpetuating cycles of craving. Research shows that lasting satisfaction in romantic relationships depends not solely on initial attraction but on nurturing and developing emotional intimacy over time. Unfortunately, like Dorian, many people today prioritize instant gratification over enduring connection. So, how can we break free from the pleasure cycle? Psychology offers several strategies to help regain control and find deeper, more sustainable fulfillment. Here are some key approaches. Practice mindfulness. Learn to appreciate the present moment without constantly yearning for what's missing. Slowing down allows us to savor life's small joys, which often hold profound meaning. Limit stimuli, reduce exposure to constant triggers like social media and stress-inducing content. By focusing inward, we reconnect with our authentic selves and rediscover intrinsic values. Redefine success. Shift away from materialistic measures of success toward inner peace and lasting spiritual growth. True fulfillment comes from within, not from external accolades. Build genuine relationships. Cultivate meaningful connections rather than pursuing shallow interactions that offer only temporary satisfaction. Deep bonds provide stability and joy that endure beyond fleeting pleasures. Control your desires, set personal boundaries, and learn to say no to temptations. Mastering your impulses prevents you from being swept up in the vortex of instant gratification. Ultimately, the lesson from Dorian Gray's story and from psychology is clear. We must learn to master our desires, seek satisfaction from real values, and avoid letting pleasure dictate our lives. Pleasure, when unchecked, becomes a hollow pursuit, leading us further from happiness rather than closer to it. As Viktor Frankl, the renowned psychiatrist, once said, "Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue." True contentment arises naturally when we focus on purpose, growth, and authenticity, not on the endless chase for fleeting highs. Neuroscientific's perspectives on pleasure. Pleasure is an undeniable part of life, but it is far from being the entirety of it. To truly grasp why we so easily become trapped in cycles of endless pursuit, let's delve into the Neuroscientific's perspective. The human brain operates on a reward system, with dopamine playing a central role, a mechanism that often leaves us perpetually unsatisfied with what we already possess. Think back to the first time you tasted your favorite dish. That burst of flavor likely left you feeling deeply satisfied. But over time, as you consumed it repeatedly, the initial excitement began to wane. Soon, you found yourself craving new flavors to reignite that same level of enjoyment. This phenomenon perfectly illustrates how the brain gets caught in an unending cycle. Dorian Gray's insatiable hunger for beauty and societal admiration mirrors this process. Similarly, individuals addicted to stimulants experience the same pattern. At first, a small dose suffices, but gradually, they require more to achieve the same high. Eventually, they become prisoners of their own uncontrollable cravings, leading to a downward spiral that can collapse their lives. When pleasure is abused, the brain begins to form neural pathways that compel individuals to return to behaviors offering fleeting satisfaction, even when those behaviors are harmful. This explains why so many people struggle to break free from habits like endlessly scrolling through social media, overspending, or seeking external validation. Constant exposure to such intense stimuli dulls our ability to appreciate life's simpler pleasures, leaving us emotionally drained and disconnected. Like Dorian Gray, who became increasingly reliant on debauchery, modern individuals often find themselves ensnared in a cycle of pleasure they cannot escape. So, how can we regain control? Ancient wisdom recommends adopting a practice known as dopamine detox or dopamine fasting. This involves temporarily stepping away from sources of excessive stimulation such as socializing, over-indulgence, or entertainment designed to trigger dopamine spikes. By doing so, the brain resets and becomes more attuned to the subtle joys of life, reading a good book, taking a peaceful walk, or simply savoring quiet moments. In today's fast-paced world, the goal isn't to achieve constant happiness but rather to master pleasure, embrace simplicity, and cultivate values that sustain long-term fulfillment. As Albert Schweitzer once said, happiness is nothing more than good health and a bad memory. Perhaps true contentment lies not in chasing endless highs but in finding balance and meaning in the everyday. Are you ready to take the first step toward breaking free from the chains of instant gratification? Practical advice to break the pleasure cycle. Through the story of Dorian Gray, we see not only a literary work, but also a powerful warning about the nature of pleasure and the endless longing of humanity. From philosophical, psychological, and Neuroscientific perspectives, we have discovered that pleasure, although an indispensable element of life, can be a double-edged sword if not properly controlled. Dorian Gray chose pleasure as the ceremony of life, believing it would bring happiness and immortality. But the more he pursued it, the more he fell into the abyss of emptiness. Like Dorian, modern humans are caught in the vortex of instant pleasure. From chasing after superficial values such as beauty, fame, and money to temporary pleasures like social media, shopping sprees, and fleeting relationships, the result is a life filled with fleeting moments of satisfaction, but lacking true peace and contentment. So, how do we break free from this cycle? The first step is to train the spirit of independence and focus on inner values. Ask yourself, what really brings lasting value to your life? Is it the number of likes on your latest post, or is it the quiet joy of spending time with loved ones? Instead of letting pleasure rule your decisions, guide your life with lasting values like love, dedication, and personal development. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Perhaps true fulfillment comes not from what we consume but from what we contribute. Mindfulness plays a crucial role in breaking the pleasure cycle. Always remember to practice mindfulness to recognize when you're about to get caught up in instant temptations. For example, before scrolling endlessly through social media, pause and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Will it truly add value to my life? Mindfulness helps you learn to appreciate the present moment instead of constantly chasing an elusive future. It teaches you to savor small joys, a warm cup of tea, a heartfelt conversation, or the beauty of a sunset rather than seeking happiness in grand, fleeting experiences. If we consider pleasure as a tool to experience and enrich life, it can become a positive part of our journey of growth. For instance, imagine using the excitement of learning a new skill or traveling to a new place as a way to broaden your horizons rather than merely ticking boxes on a bucket list. However, if we let pleasure control us, it transforms into an invisible prison, keeping us trapped in a cycle of deprivation and dissatisfaction. Take time to reflect and make small, intentional changes. Start by enjoying occasional moments of stillness, perhaps a morning walk without your phone or a tech-free dinner with family. Build authentic relationships based on trust and shared values rather than superficial connections driven by convenience or fleeting emotions. Live a life of purpose by aligning your actions with your deeper goals and passions. Remember, the key is balance. Don't let pleasure control you. Take control of it and direct it toward lasting happiness. As Viktor Frankl wisely noted, happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. True contentment arises naturally when we focus on meaningful pursuits rather than chasing endless highs. Finally, don't underestimate the power of small changes. Start today by setting boundaries, for example. Limit your screen time, say no to unnecessary indulgences, or dedicate a few minutes each day to gratitude journaling. These small steps can lead to profound transformations over time. After all, as Lao-Tzu said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The story of Dorian Gray concludes in tragedy, but your life doesn't have to follow the same path. Stay vigilant against the allure of fleeting temptations, seek out true value, and strive to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. Happiness is not a distant destination waiting to be reached, it's a journey you can choose to embark on right here, right now. Through the story of Dorian Gray and profound insights from philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience, we've learned that pleasure, while an essential part of life, can become a shackle trapping us in an endless cycle of dissatisfaction if left unchecked. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Man grows only when he overcomes his own limitations." This reminds us that instead of letting pleasure control us, we should turn it into a tool for self-development and seek true meaning in life. Thank you for joining Ancient Wisdom in this video. If you found the content valuable, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your loved ones. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Do you agree that pleasure can be a trap? And keep listening, because an exciting discussion will begin in just a few moments. See you soon in part 2.